Hello, welcome to Forest Focus. As Nottingham Forest do the double over Manchester United, sit third in the Premier League, are in the FA Cup semi-final, and seemingly have a load of money to spend this summer. So we'll hear indirectly from football finance expert Kieran Maguire, who I spoke to earlier today. I'll read out some quotes from him around the summer transfer budget. But before that, we'll discuss the Man United win last night, 1-0, in great detail. First of all, with Pete Blackburn. Pete, how are you doing?
Afternoon, yeah. Good, thank you. Nice to be on with a legitimate local legend rather than one of our normal idiots like me.
I thought you were about Gary Birtles there. When you thought you were going on Gary.
Yeah, no, I wasn't casting any shade, no.
Yeah, good to have another European Cup winner with us in Colin Barrett. Colin, how are you?
Very good, thanks, Matt. Very good.
Yeah, great to have you with us. Good to hear a different perspective on things. So we'll just in general, Colin, you were there last night. What did you make of it in general? And then we'll branch off into the main talking points.
In general, I thought Manchester United were the better footballing side on the night. But Forest have found this way of winning football matches, and that's all that matters. I think overall, I think Forest scored with their only shot. Having said that, it was a fantastic goal. And Man United had quite a few shots, and quite a few shots were blocked and all those sorts of things. So Man United didn't make as much as the opportunities they had. And if Forest have had the same opportunities, I think it would have been 5 or 6. So
we'll take it. We'll take it, Pete. What about you? Were you there, Pete, by the way? I haven't asked you this.
Yeah, I was there. Oh man, it's just, I think I said on the preview pod, it's just an incredible privilege to go to these games at the moment, isn't it? Each time we have one of these night games, it feels like we're just going to make brilliant memories that we're going to remember for decades to come, and that's exactly what happened again. The atmosphere was unreal, and just watching that Forest side sort of lay their bodies on the line to get the 3 points, as they do time and time again, no matter how many minutes they've played the game before and the sort of trauma they've been through on the pitch, it's just incredible. I think what we're seeing right now is that Nuno, I guess with the support of the recruitment team, the coaching team, and the best home and away fans in the country right now, it's just caught lightning in a bottle, I think. They found a recipe and an environment that makes good players great. A very solid team becomes much more than the sum of its parts, and there's just a fantastic bond and feeling around the club. And I think the most remarkable thing about it is that these things keep happening. You know, that lightning in a bottle hasn't been fleeting; it's been enduring and remains enduring. You know, we've been in the Champions League places now for months and months. All the predictions from the naysayers before from grace, they're all falling silent. I think this is now our second best ever performance over the first 30 games of a top flight campaign, second only to Colin and the lads in 77, 78. So what a time to be a Forest fan.
How much of it is like just momentum, Colin? Pete says about catching lightning in a bottle. Do we keep catching the next batch of lightning just down to momentum, do you think?
It's everything. I mean, obviously they started the season off half decent, and then they got some really good results, and then obviously momentum builds. And with momentum, anything can happen. They've been fortunate enough along the line to not have many suspensions, not have many injuries to key players, and that helps. Having said that, the manager, for all his whatever he's doing, whatever magic dust he's sprinkling on these players, he seems to be getting it right. Whether he changes formation, which he does quite regularly late on in the games, plays the 3 centre halves, it works. And everything is turning into gold dust for them. And the players themselves, I think now they sense that they have something to fight for. And I feel that they're actually fighting tooth and nail to make sure they get the results they need. You take last night, I have to say, they must have, I don't know, stopped umpteen crosses, stopped umpteen blocks. And luckily for Forest, they've got actually defenders who actually like to defend, which is a real big plus in this game. And from a momentum point of view, I just think they'll just think, bring it on, bring whatever game we've come in now, and they might be feeling a bit weary, and from game to game, but they find a way, and I think that's important, that to find a way, and they're doing that now.
I remember, Colin, you were on the old podcast I did, and this was 3 years ago. And when I asked you on this, I remembered a quote from it. So you must have been very interesting 3 years ago. I'll read this quote out, and it struck me as something that sort of is prevalent today. Sometimes when things aren't going well for you, not intentionally, you aren't there. You concentrate on your own job. You don't go the extra yard to stop a cross, make a tackle, make an angle for a pass. You play safe, but when things are going well, you move a yard quicker, you make yourself available, and it becomes easier. Is that really what we're seeing with this team, especially defensively last night when you reference all those block shots, block crosses? Is that symptomatic of everything?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's when you class momentum and all these things put together, it's a desire to want to win a football match and put all that in the mix, and you do go that extra yard again, not knowingly. It sounds stupid. Not knowingly, you're doing it. You just think it's the norm to do it. But when you run a struggling side, you do see a difference. You really do see a difference, and you can tell these players that they are. Let's for argument's sake look at Man City now. We're streets ahead of everybody in the country 6 months ago, 12 months ago. They're nowhere near now. And they're probably thinking the same thing, but I'm doing the same things. But they're not. They're doing that half a yard less, that not so much great effort to make the angle for the pass. So they're doing all those things. And they're getting caught, which they didn't do before. So they're having a bad year. But it's just this thing. From Forest's point of view, I don't know. Murillo, how many is cleared off the line? But he just likes defending. He and his centre-half alongside him and the fullbacks, they make sure that even if the keeper's beaten, they always get back. They like defending, as I said before. They really like defending, and they'll do anything to keep the ball out of the net.
Was it summed up most in a way? They're all really good, Pete, obviously, but when you think of Nico, when he first signed for us, defensively he was pretty suspect as a right back, and now you see those blocks from Garnacho last night before we even referenced the energy he shows get forward, but just defensively, did that sum it all up for you?
Yeah, I think so. Although I think if I was going to pick one moment, it'd probably be that Ryan Yates block on Garnacho where he spins around and then gets the crowd going. That's the spirit of the side summed up in one moment, isn't it? I think one of the joys of this Forest team at the moment is that everyone comes into the team and improves. That's got to be a really good statement about the environment and the culture and whatever you want to call it, the coaching ability of the staff and all that sort of stuff. It just seems like everyone who comes into that team progresses, and we've seen it so many times, haven't we? And there's obviously also a mentality thing because there's just such willingness to overcome obstacles and difficult moments. Like how many times has Nico been questioned? How many times has Yates been questioned? Matt Sells last season. All of them, they keep fighting. They stand up to be counted, don't they? And they just seem to get better. And it's just it's a lovely thing to be part of because it builds a bit of a connection with the supporters as well, doesn't it? Yeah, like you say, I thought Nico was fantastic as he has been for weeks now. He's putting in unbelievably consistent performances, and I guess you suddenly notice what he's been doing when you realise that he's not going to be available for that semi-final, and it feels like a big old loss, doesn't it?
Yeah, massively. 300 people with us already, which is lovely. Do us a favour, hit like if you haven't already. And thank you to Charlie Price for signing up for membership. Very good of you, Charlie. Just dipping into the live chat quickly. I'll throw this one at Colin before we get back on the agenda. Question from Z. Is this football sustainable in the long run, though? It depends what you qualify as long run. We're already 30 games in, but if he's going beyond this season, do you think this kind of backs the wall kind of football that we've often but not always seen, is it sustainable, Colin?
You do wonder, but because you're doing this, it becomes the norm, if you know what I mean. And you can add on to it. You can add the ability to keep the ball. You can add onto it the ability to go forward more and more dominant. But the first things first, like sides, you build from the back. I might be out of order there somewhere along the line. Somebody will contradict me. But if you look at even the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, they start from the back. Admittedly, they'll go forward and they'll have great players to finish the job off. But more or less, you start from the back. And I feel that Forest have not just the back five, including the keeper, but they also have other people doing a lot. You talk about Ryan Yates. The one thing about Ryan Yates, he's Marmite, isn't he? Half the people don't like him, and half the people do like him. The one thing about Ryan Yates, I know from Ryan Yates that when he puts that shirt on, he's going to give me something. And he's going to run his socks off. He might not be the greatest footballer in the world, but he is going to be there. And he's always going to be a person who won't go hiding. He won't go run away from anything. He'll take it full on. Yes, he falls down like a 10-pin bowling pin. He falls down all the time. I accept that. It's part of his game. It's part of his, if you like, little quirk that he's got, that he can stop the play. And he disrupts the play. And he does all the horrible things that quality footballers hate to play against. And he is that type of player. They hate to play against Ryan Yates. So I feel there's that sustainable, it will run its term, because eventually most things do. But I feel at this moment in time, they're playing. I mean, let's just be honest. Last night's performance, I don't think at any time in 90 minutes did they play out from the back. Did they even think about playing out from the back? So that comes from the management saying, look, we can't do this at this moment in time against this side. So we put the ball long and put it in their area, and we defend from there. And that's what they did for the best part of an hour plus last night, which is exceptional. And I think when you have a manager who says, I'm not going to change, I don't think they can do that. Everybody you can have the greatest players in the world. You can have the greatest tactics. You can have the greatest tactics in the world. But if you haven't got the players to play that, it's pointless. Absolutely pointless. And I think Forest, this moment in time, the management know exactly what they've got and exactly what they need to do to win a football match. And they're doing it very, very well. And if they have to stay in games, they stay in games. Stay in games for as long as you can. I mean, our gaffer used to say, look, if you go 1-0 down, keep it 1-0. Just keep it 1-0, because you'll get a chance. And once you get that chance, you take it, and then you come off with drawing, or in some cases, winning. And I think that's, that doesn't change. That mantra hasn't changed in football today.
Yeah, and I don't think Pete, last night it wasn't like we have to play like that in every game. A lot of games we've been, front foot and different. But last night, in terms of, it was backs against the wall because we played 120 minutes as well, and things like that. The adversity that went into it. I mean, how big a win was it in terms of just bloody mindedness to get a result? I guess.
I think it's enormous. Each one of these moments must just be the sort of boost for the team that carries them through all of that tiredness that you talk about. And the effort they've gone to in the cup run has been pretty ridiculous, hasn't it, really? And not a massive squad. So I think they probably desperately need to be having these moments of real joy to carry them through all that, how knackered they are. I think for our season, it's a really big win, partly because we now go to Aston Villa with a slightly depleted looking lineup, some questions to answer, I guess, some players to come in, and it massively takes the pressure off. I think 3 points in the bag already from this next run of 3 games with Villa and Everton ahead, and I think before that run I would have been saying if you can get 5 points out of those 3 games, you're in a really good place. We're still going to be where we are, and we're 3 games closer to the end of the season and looking good for that European qualification. So we've already done three of those points now. And I think it just takes a little bit of the pressure off, and hopefully we can go and get a result against Villa. I just think there's a real sense of momentum about the team right now, and obviously these results are a massive part of that. And I came out of the game last night thinking, probably for the first time this season, I just don't think we can be denied in that Champions League race now. It just feels like it's going to happen, and I don't mean that to be sort of complacent or arrogant or anything. I just feel like what the team are doing and just how committed they all are to it, it feels like it's going to be unstoppable. I think that question about sustainability is a really interesting question, and a properly legitimate one. I guess 30 games in, you'd say that's been tested to a degree already. It's not, we're not early on in the season. And another point would be, I think Nuno's done this before, hasn't he, at Wolves, and it lasted longer than a season. So he can obviously do it, but there will have to be tweaks, I'm sure. And I think you're right to say that Forest have diversified as the season's gone on. Nuno's introduced lots of different tactical plans. He's used the players in different ways. I think we showed against Brighton we can set up with 100 central midfielders in the middle of the pitch and do that sort of job. But we've also had games where we've been more front foot, and I think we'll probably have to develop some of that sort of stuff. I think the sort of analyst types in football who, they're not for everyone. They'll tell you that we're probably 14 points ahead of where we should be if you look at expected goals and all that sort of stuff. And I get that data is divisive and there are flaws with it, but I think it's obviously useful in some senses and clubs use it and whatever. I guess the question you ask is, why are we 14 points ahead of where we should be if you put any store in that? I think some of it is that we've been absolutely, what I'd say is we saw it last night, right? We've been absolutely ruthless and efficient when we have moments. I mean, Elanga just scores an absolute wonder goal out of nowhere. And Chris Wood's been doing similar, albeit, sort of less worldy, like all season, hasn't he? He's just taken chances far above the rate you'd expect of any striker. And the other part of it is all that togetherness and things that we've been talking about so far today. That gets you points that perhaps you might look at a game and think you don't deserve them, but ultimately that's part of the game as well, isn't it? I think both of those things probably can continue to a degree. The finishing side of it might be unsustainable. I don't know if Chris Wood is realistically going to have another season like that. We might have to find another player to do that job. But I think the spirit of the team will carry us through some of that stuff, and I expect that Nuno will keep evolving. We'll get more players. I suppose the big question will be the European competition on the side of league competition, and that's another big step up, isn't it? With so many games to play, so whether it's sustainable, I think that's probably the biggest question. But I think there's something special about the team that's overcoming lots of that stuff.
Yeah, I think so. When the counter goes back to 0 at the start of next season, though, Colin, you haven't got that momentum behind you. Is that going to be the interesting point as much as anything for this team?
Well, I've always said in football is 7 days. You don't look any further than days, because you can win one weekend and it shuts everybody up for 7 days, and then you lose the next weekend, and then it all comes tumbling down, or it feels that. And likewise, I mean, everybody's thinking, well, what about next year? Why don't we just worry when next year, right? I think this year is the most important thing. This week, 2 seconds, my granddaughter's just come in. Just bear with me, Kieran. I'm just on the phone. Sorry about that. Right. family chaos here. So you've just got to say to yourself, we're dealing with now, the here and now. And yes, we would like to progress, but deal with it now. Now, I'm sure they've got plans in the pipework for if, and it's a big if we keep him, if we sell him, if we could buy him, if we could do that. They're all ifs. At this moment in time, reality hits. You were third in the league. You have the biggest opportunity to win a trophy, which is unbelievable for a club like Forest at this stage of the season. You are in the Champions League spot. The way the European system is working, it could go down to 7 English sides in the European Cup, which is unheard of. If you think Man United win the UEFA and Aston Villa, who could be out of top 5, go and win the European Cup. So you could end up with 7 teams in England playing in the European Cup. But it's nothing, you can't deal with that. All they can deal with at the minute is Aston Villa on Saturday. And then if not, well, after Aston Villa, it's Everton. And after that, it's whoever. And then they've got Man City in the FA Cup final. What a 4-week spell they're going to have, or a 5-week spell, where every single fan in this city is absolutely buoyant. Absolutely. I'm sure the productivity in every workplace in the city has gone through the roof because people are smiling. People are actually smiling going to work because of what happens on a Saturday afternoon. I'm sure, I might be crazy, but I feel as though it's got a great opportunity. These kids have got a great opportunity to write their own piece of history. Really have.
Excellent. Right, we'll just take a quick word for the Trent navigation, and we'll talk about Ryan Yates and Anthony Elanga's goal in about 15 seconds. Just a reminder, the Villa game is on TV, so you can watch it 5:30 kickoff. You can watch it at the Nav, indoor screens, outdoor screens. Get your dinner there, make a day of it. It should be sunny, and so yeah, enjoy that. Also, while we're talking about the Trent navigation, just a quick reminder, it's our live show tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Lewis is on the panel. Tickets are £5 from gigantic.com. There are still some available. So, yeah, it should be a lovely evening in weather terms and entertainment, hopefully, as well. So do join us for that. Quick question on a tangent, Colin, from the live chat. I saw someone was saying, you must have been asked this before, about Mull of Kintyre. There's the story that Forest fans heard you singing it in a Spanish bar. That's where it came from. I've heard lots of different versions about where it came from. And what's your version?
Well, we came out to Robin Hood when we played Robin Hood, like the Robin Hood song. I think the Mull of Kintyre song only took really hold maybe 10 years ago, if that. I can't see it before then, or I can't remember before then. But from our day, funnily enough, we'd beaten Manchester United on the Saturday at Old Trafford when everybody said our bubble would burst, and likewise probably everybody's saying that this current Forest side, they'll never sustain what they're doing, and they have done. They said our bubble would burst, and we beat Man United 4. And from that, we went to Benidorm. And then we went in a bar in Benidorm, which was funny. I think it was called the Robin Hood Bar, I think, silly enough. And we were having a few beers in there. And all of a sudden, because this Mull of Kintyre was in the hit parade and whatever, and John O'Hare saw a snorkel on a wall. So he got this snorkel off the wall and pretended it was a set of bagpipes. So then we all started singing the song. And that's, from the player's point of view, if you're saying that's the original, yes, it is. That's from our point of view. But I don't think they've been singing that at the City Ground for 40 years. I think they've been singing it for, I don't know, if I'm being 10 years, I don't know, somebody will tell me. Somewhere along the line, when it really took hold, I'm talking about when it really took hold. I'm sure it was always there in the background, but when it really took hold, I think maybe no more than 10 years ago, I don't think. But I think it's a great one. I mean, the whole of the football world is talking about it. That first bit before each and every game. And I know people who stood on Trent Bridge and taking photographs and, microphones on Trent Bridge, listening to it. So you've got to say it's a bit special. It really is a bit special.
Let's get back to the game. If you need to go, by the way, to look after your granddaughter or anything, we can let you go early, Colin.
Oh, no, she's all right. She's all right. Yeah, she's just a pain in the backside, but she's all right, really.
Good. Anthony Elanga's goal, Pete. Where one of the best you've seen? This is always hard to quantify. One of the best you've seen in person at the ground, or not?
I think it must be. It was pretty special, wasn't it? I loved all of it, but it happened so quickly, didn't it? What a mad blur, and to be able to do everything he does at that speed is pretty crazy. But his first touch, I thought, was just so good. Running at that pace to get the ball to stay in front of him and set up the rest of the opportunity was just class. And then, he embarrassed all three of their defenders, didn't he? One sort of left flopping around on the floor, and then two sort of backing off, absolutely terrified. It was just brilliant, and the celebrations were, as good as it gets, really. I think we know that he's got that in him, and we've seen it. We've seen moments before, haven't we? Last season he had a run of looking really dangerous. And that goal last night was the culmination of a really good period of form for him as well, and really impacting games as well, not just moments, but creating goals and scoring goals. And we've needed it as well, with Wood out now, obviously, and having not scored a lot of late when he was in the team and available. Elanga and Hudson-Odoi have really sort of carried the torch, I guess. Elanga's he took a lot of stick earlier in the season, and on this podcast we were getting pelters for constantly defending him when there was talk of selling him and all that sort of stuff. But I just think he's a player who has that sort of quality in him. And if you can find a level of consistency, then, we've got a hell of a player on our hands, and it looks like he's doing that at the moment.
How could they have defended that, Colin? Was there anything you can do when a player's running at you apart from just take him down?
He has this horrible thing called pace. For a defender, no defender likes that. They do say if you're playing against somebody really quick, try and get as tight as you can with him early doors and not allow him to turn and not allow him to get any momentum going. That's easier said than done. From where Elanga picked the ball up, he was in front of the players to start with. And then he went. And then I think it was Garnacho was chasing after him, I think it was, couldn't keep up with him, went to ground. And then all of a sudden, they're 2 against 2. And then they back off. They back off and they back off and they back off. Cloughley would have turned around and said to somebody, if you back off any more, you'll be in blooming Trent cricket ground. Never mind. So from the point of view of stopping him, you've just got to take a gamble at some stage. You've got to say, he ain't going to come any further. And if he goes past me, then at least I've made him do something. They didn't make Elanga change in any way, his direction. His direction was so straight to goal. At one stage, I'm thinking he's going to pass it, but then he just carried on. And then the guy who was marking the lad he was going to pass the ball to, he was caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. But he decided to go with the spare man instead of really saying, I'm going to go attack the ball. Because if he plays it, the kid's offside. But he doesn't know that. He just doesn't know. He couldn't take that chance. So he backed off, and it's in the penalty area, and bang, it's a goal. I will say this, it would not happen in our day, because the football pitch in our day was just nothing like the football pitch we played. I mean, it would have bounced around all over the place, but I have to say it was a sensational goal. And all credit to the boy. And you can argue all you want about what he can and can't do, but he's got this wonderful thing called pace. And also, the boy's 22. So, and he's had, I don't know whether this is his first full season in a football team, or whether he's been a bit part here, and all right, he's probably missed a few games for Forest, but he's probably played more consistently for Forest than he did for Manchester United. Now, if you're trying to compare the Manchester United players who were playing in his position against him, I can see why they left him out, because they went for name players instead of what he could do. But that's Manchester United. He's come to Forest, he's doing a job for Forest, and he's doing a really, really good job for Forest, to be honest. When you consider that the likes of Brendan Johnson went out, who had pace as well, and this boy's come in and taken his place. But the lad can only do what he can do, and again, he's just enjoying his football, and he's showing that he's doing that, and it's just wonderful to see.
Yeah, that's what's that? 6 goals, 8 assists in the league this season. 12 of those 14 goal involvements come in the last 16 games, going back to Villa at home, Pete. And he stepped up at a time when Hudson-Odoi was out as well. Hudson-Odoi should be back for the Villa game, but no Chris Woods, no Hudson-Odoi. Gibbs White, I'm not sure he's 100% fit, but he put a real shift in. But someone keeps stepping up, don't they? And it was Elanga last night.
Yeah, that's as I was saying before. There are players in real purple patches right now, and they're making up for us not having a striker who's going to be a massive constant goal threat. And I mean, I guess the thing about Elanga as well is that he's perfect for us, right? The way that we want to play and the space that he's going to have to operate in when we do win the ball and we get moving, he's just perfect. I mean, if you could design a footballer for that role in our team, you'd want someone who can run the 100 metres in 10 seconds and do what he does. He's got all that space to run into. I think there was some frustration earlier in the season, wasn't there? Because we often talked about him not really using that pace. He seemed to sort of come inside off the wing, and he'd be trying to get involved in the link-up and that sort of stuff. But really what you want, I guess, is him just to be a constant threat, keeping that defence really honest, and then running in behind, using his pace, knocking it past players whenever he possibly can. And I think that's where he is right now. And like you say, absolutely stepping up. And yeah, he's a real joy to watch, and it's always nice to see one of our players just proving the doubters wrong and doing what he's doing.
We're getting some good random questions today in the live chat. I'll take this one as well. For Colin, you'll have been on the pitch when things like this happen. Do you read anything into the Gibbs White Milenkovic handbags after, I think it was Milenkovic's poor clearance and Mason Mount put it wide? Anything to read into that, or just something that happens on the pitch?
Well, it happens, I've seen fights on the training ground. I've seen everything, arguments all over. I've seen arguments in dressing rooms. I've seen, people pinned up against the wall. It's the heat of the minute. people, players will deal with it, the way they see fit to deal with it. And you just don't hold any grudges with your mates, but you let that's how good a side there. That's how this side is now becoming a really talented side, because they're asking a lot of each other, and a lot of each other to do the right things. And if he was caught not doing the right things, he deserved a rocket. So that's it. Bottom line.
I think I didn't see anything untoward in it at all. The funny thing was that Gibbs White did the same thing against Man City, and Kovacic put it about an inch wide of the post as well. So perhaps he had a flashback to that. So these things happen. Yeah,
I think Matt, I guess from obviously very limited expertise compared to Colin, but you see football teams sometimes, don't you? And I think this Man United team have been guilty of that, where there's a lot of players moaning at each other and that sort of stuff. But I think it just feels like a very different thing. It feels like what we see here is the odd moment where Forest players are holding each other to the high standards that they want, and that feels like a really healthy thing to me.
Yeah, Man United are petulant, aren't they? Garnacho getting himself booked for smacking the ball wide after being caught offside and stupid stuff like that. Yeah. Talking of petulant, Ryan Yates, Colin, he gets in people's heads. He got in Fernandez's head. He got in Casemiro's head. One of the comparisons that is made now with Yates is with John McGovern. I think that's more in the sense of dividing opinion. You're the perfect person to ask. Do you see much in that, or is that too big a stretch?
I can see similarities in as much as they were. Let's be brutally honest. John McGovern was not the great field player in that position in the Football League at that time, but it was the one that did the job for us. And Ryan Yates is the one that's doing the job for Forest at the minute in that position, and it works. I mean, whatever you say about Ryan Yates, and if you look at all his past managers that he's had, they could have had these doubts as well, but they always end up playing him. So that alone tells you he's got something. Now, the difference between John McGovern and Yatesy, possibly McGovern didn't have Yates's pace. And if Yates could get on the end of some of the chances he creates or gets on the end of, and if he could finish up with more goals, you would have a really top player on your side. Because he gets himself some great opportunities to score goals. I think he headed one last night where keeper made a save. And you just have to say, that's the difference. Border, I call him Border, that was his nickname. Border he got hold of the ball, he broke the play up, he passed the ball. Broke the play up, passed the ball. Ryan Yates may be a bit more aggressive, but Border wouldn't shirk a tackle. Border would go straight in and he would go head to head with people, and he would kick, and he would, all the things that you have to do. And to compare players is very, very difficult. To compare, 40 years ago to today is very, very difficult to do. But all I can say is what you're getting from Ryan Yates is exactly what we got from John McGovern. Wholehearted. You can guarantee, he'll get performance, and that's what you can get from Ryan Yates.
Was it his best game for us, Pete? The other one I always think of is Chelsea away when we won 1-0. That's the other one. Was that up there with that? Surpass it or not?
Oh, I have to give that a bit more thought, I think. I mean, it was definitely up there, wasn't it? He just confounds people constantly, doesn't he? Temp spoke quite well about him earlier this week. He recalled that story of the impression Yatesy left on Roy Keane when he was assistant manager because he smashed João Carvalho in training. And I think Temp's called him he's sort of the guy who carries the piano for all the other maestros to play it. And I sort of hope that stuff doesn't sound patronising or disrespectful, because Ryan Yates is a Premier League player on merit. No one's doing him any favours. He's in the team because of what he contributes, right? It's not necessarily the pretty stuff that makes the highlights packages. But when you're in the ground, the things that Yatesy does, they mean as much as those moments. And like I said, with the block on Garnacho, it looked like Garnacho got past him and that perhaps Yates's weight was on the wrong foot and wasn't going to be able to get there. But it's that sort of moment where his desperation to do whatever he can to have an impact on the game, and he does. And it must be just infectious throughout the team what he does, and the constant keeping the standards high. And as Colin said earlier, the other side of it is that he's just a massive, constant pain in the arse for the opposition. And how many times this season have we seen really highly vaunted international stars whose level of performance is just dragged down because Ryan Yates is in their face and whispering in their ear all game? What was it, McAllister, Enzo Fernandez, Bruno and Casemiro last night? They hate it, and it's a massive contribution for us. And I just couldn't love the guy anymore. I'm just running out of words to say about him on this podcast, I think.
Quite a few more things I want to pack in before we just talk about that Kieran Maguire stuff. One of them is I'll ask you about the fullbacks, Colin, actually. Ola went off injured. A sports doctor who messages me said if it's a relatively minor calf strain, that's 3 or 4 weeks, which takes us right up to the FA Cup semi-final. Obviously problematic. Moreno came on. Moreno came on. I thought he did really well, especially off the back of that. What do you make of our fullbacks last night in terms of Moreno coming in from the cold? How hard is it to do that, and how worried would you be about Ola being out for a while, Colin?
But again, what the manager did, he also brought another centre half on to put 3 at the back, and then Moreno went down the left hand side, so he's more of a wing back as opposed to an actual old fashioned fullback. And Nico Williams flipped over to the right side. What I will say over the season, both fullbacks, all 3 really, but certainly both the main fullbacks of these last few weeks, there's been Aina and Nico Williams, and both of them have been outstanding. Aina, I believe, in my opinion, is possibly one of the top fullbacks in the Premier League, without a doubt, without a shadow. He's got everything in his locker. He can play left, he can play right. He's got great ability. He can mark tight. He can get round on cover. He can attack. He's got everything in his locker. Nico Williams, there were doubts about the boy. No, I can't argue with that. But what he has shown is that he is, again, buckling down, and he is playing. He's putting the extra shift in, the extra yard, and the extra bits and pieces. And he's having 1 season and a half. And again, it might just be the fact that he's been playing regular. And I just feel that both of those fullbacks have been exceptional. Now, how it will change if Aina is out for a while, I don't know, because what happens is he's really, really physically strong on that side. And obviously the other lad, the other side, and he'll come in and don't forget he's an international player. So he's a good player, good fullback, and he'll forward. So it might be different. Whether or not they'll go and change the system and play 3 centre halves and shore that up a little bit more, because they normally start with 2 centre halves, 2 fullbacks, and then revert to 3 centre halves and 2 wing backs. So whether or not they start with that, it'll be interesting to see what they do against Villa. Because if we talk about Villa now, next game, they've got Rashford, who, whatever you say about him, he needed to leave Manchester United and start again. If he wanted to carry on in football, he needed to get away from Old Trafford. And he could be a threat. Physically, he's a strong boy. And Aina, I think, would have had him in his pocket. I'll be honest with you. I really think he would have. I'm not so sure about the rest of it. But I think as long as Nico Williams gets tight on him, if he's playing right back, I don't think Rashford will cause him a great deal of problems one-on-ones. But if he lets him run at him, it could be problematic. But again, I just think it's, because of the way they set up, because of the way these boys are, I think they'll cope with it. I think they'll cope with anything now because they see the end line. It might be a million miles away or feel a million miles away, but the end line is there, and they see it, and they see what possibly could be something special, and they will try their socks off to get a result. And as Pete said about earlier on about the run of 3 games, the manager will say we're only looking to the next one. But I can guarantee you now they think, well, we've got 3 points in the bag. We've got Villa next week, which was those 2 games alone. They've got 3 points out of 2 games, and as an ordinary person, I'd be happy with that. I really would have been happy with that before the game. You could have played really, really well against Man United. You could play really, really well against Villa and end up drawing them. But so the best part of it is they've got 3 points, and then they take on Villa, and so long as they compete with Villa and make sure Villa have to work hard, because Villa have got big season ahead of them, you know. And I think that is, he'll be thinking about the European Cup in the midweek. I think they play Paris Saint-Germain. He'd be thinking about that. If he isn't, then he's telling fibs. But I feel that, you know, the fullbacks, well, I think all of them have done remarkably well. But the fullbacks, both of them have been exceptional this year. Really have.
500 plus people with us, which is fantastic. So do us a favour and hit like if you haven't already. Just last topic I wanted to touch on briefly, Pete, and I'll ask Colin this as well, actually. Danilo and Taiwo were probably the two that people were most critical of, I guess, last night, which feels a bit harsh because we played really well as a team. What was your take on those two? And then I'll ask Colin the same question.
I mean, I think harsh is one word for it. I think that sort of criticism is pretty ridiculous, to be honest. And not only that, but totally counterproductive. And Danilo is feeling his way back into things after a long time out injured. His performances have been a bit of a mixed bag, no doubt. I thought he struggled last night. He's had some really good moments coming back into the team, particularly when he's been in that sort of deep playmaking type role, I guess, where he's had a bit of time and space to play, because you know that he can play and he can pass ball through the lines and all that sort of stuff. I think when there's a lot of intensity around him and he's been rushed, it's looked a bit more difficult for him. And I think it's just a case of time. You know, we've seen him perform well in this team before, and I think we know that he's got ability. It's also worth saying he's been sort of ferried around the team, isn't he? I mean, you know, playing in that sort of wide left role, that's not a position that he's played before, as far as I'm aware of, and I'm not sure it's really where he wants to be playing or what his natural strengths are. But he's trying to do a job for the team. But last night there was a bit of a struggle in there. I don't think we, with the ball, I don't think we played particularly well. And there was, I think Danilo, Gibbs White, Anderson, they were all sort of getting on top of each other a little bit. It was all very tight. I think they were finding it quite hard to link up. And, you know, Danilo's the one who doesn't have the sort of industry of Yates and Anderson. So I guess Nuno felt, he said after the game that he felt we were losing control and we needed to find a way to sort of claim a bit of that control back. So I understood the decision to take him off. But given all the context that I've just mentioned, I've no idea why anyone would be being critical of Danilo. Not a great night, but we know that he's someone who can contribute and he's coming back from injury and all that sort of stuff. Why not just be patient and give the lad a break? And I guess the similar thoughts on Taiwo, who actually I thought played pretty well, to be honest. Again, similar story. Someone who's had almost no football whatsoever. We said the other day he's averaging 13, 14 minutes when he plays a game, and Colin will know much better than me, but it feels to me that that's not an easy situation, especially for someone who clearly looks like they need time to get up to scratch. And we've seen that with him before. Taiwo will always look awkward, and at his best he looks awkward, but he still scored us the goals that kept us in the Premier League. And I think a little bit of perspective around that would not go amiss, to be honest. But look, I thought he played pretty well last night, to be honest. The 2 games that he's come back into the team since Wood's been out, I don't think you would have looked at Chris Wood having made either of those performances and criticised him. You know, he wasn't in a position to be a massive threat. He was on his own, isolated, and most of what he was doing was fighting for the team and defending from the front and trying to be a pain in the arse for those centre halves. And he absolutely was that. You know, sometimes he struggles to get the ball under control and it looks a little bit loose. But I thought for the most part he battled really hard. He occupied the centre halves. I think he kept them honest, and actually some of his link-up play was pretty sharp. You know, it's worth thinking like what around him was working particularly well with the ball. Like, you know, Gibbs White had a really difficult game and was struggling to make things happen. He was on his own, really, wasn't he? And most of what he was doing was just battling for the side. And I think he did that well. I just think if you're criticising players when we're 3rd in the Premier League and making magical memories like we were last night, I think you need to have a bit of a look at yourself and ask yourself, were you one of those people who was slagging off Elanga and saying we should sell him? Look at him now. I don't get it at all. This is as good as it gets to be a football fan. Get behind the lads and support it.
What about you, Colin, on Danilo and Taiwo?
I think Taiwo was up there on his Jack Jones, and basically he was to fight for every ball. He battled as best he could on scraps. Yeah, he doesn't look. He looks gangly and he looks out of order sometimes. And yes, he could maybe score more goals than he does. But you've got to look at him over the last 3 seasons. His appearances have not been many for a centre forward as such. So he's missing game time for one, but he's still occupied basically their back four, playing on his own, and they kept shoving balls up to him. As I said, the tactic last night was make sure we don't give anything away. So basically, you're not playing around with it at the back. You're getting the ball forward and hit the big guy. And he battled his socks off up there on his own. Obviously, he didn't win everything, but he made it so difficult for the Man United players to win the ball where they wanted to win it. I owe credit to the kid. It was on his Jack Jones. With a kid in midfield, if he doesn't play left side, or he's in that side, I think Yates was more concerned with what Fernandes was doing, in all honesty. Fernandes is a top midfield player. Casemiro, his history tells you he's a top midfield player. They're not mugs, for whatever Man United are going through. These boys are not mugs. So for Forest to compete with them in that area, they did really well. Yes, he wasn't on the ball all the time, but nobody was on the ball all the time. Nobody, from Forest's point of view, actually got all of that football and dictated the play at any given time. They just did battle, and I think I said to you earlier on about when we were going as a side, and we thought we were onto something when we played Man United at Christmas, and we beat Man United. But we played all our football up to Christmas, and I mean all our football was great to play. But then after Christmas, it was a battle. And this is what this Forest side are doing. They're doing exactly the same. They could be battered, but if they win 1-0, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As I've said to you before about what Jimmy Cyril used to say, the Notts County manager, he said, you can have, let me get this right, the best team always wins. The rest is just hearsay. And that is it. That's it in a nutshell. You win football matches. A lot of these managers now, they're more interested in passing. But they forget about the be all and end all. It's winning a football match. And I think this Forest setup at the minute, they're more concerned the other way around. We win a football match. And we'll do whatever it is we can to win a football match. So I've got no issues with any of those players last night. They put an absolute monumental shift in to get result. And it's always nice to beat Man United. It's always nice. No matter which football fan you are, it's always nice to beat Man United.
Certainly is. Right, we'll take a word from our second sponsors. Hopefully no one saw me dribble tea down my face like an old man there while Colin was talking as well. But I think that's the second time I've done that today. I did it on another interview as well. Thank you very much to Best of Blind, anyway, for their support. If you're looking for new shutters, new blinds made to measure in Notts or across the East Midlands, then do check them out. Link is in the description. Right, last topic I want to touch on in about 10 minutes or so is the accounts for the 2023-24 season were out. So I spoke to Kieran Maguire, the football finance expert, earlier. I had to dust off my shorthand, which Pete will know is not easy if you haven't done it for about 8 years. But I got some quotes here, and I'll ask Colin and Pete about them in terms of transfer stuff.
How accurate are these quotes going to be, Matt, if you've been using your 20-year long lost shorthand?
Let's just say I never passed 100 words per minute. I got to 80. And
my word, this is going to be a right mess. I hope he's not watching.
I hope he's not listening. And I did write them down straight after I'd spoken to him, for this very reason, but they're not too much, don't worry. Right, asked about his general thoughts on the accounts, which showed, by the way, £12 million profit on, we had an overall loss of 73 million, and that mostly the profit came from £101 million profit in sales. So that's like Johnson, Niakate, Mangala, and of course for Kodimos. So asking what he made of it overall. He said it shows the player trading model since promotions ultimately worked. To make £100 million sales is excellent financially. It's laid to rest, and he worries a repeat of PSR problems. We're losing £1.4 million a week, he said. But he said, welcome to the Premier League. That was his view of it. That's how it goes. So can we go big in the summer? I said, how risky would it be? There's always an element of risk. With the numbers I'm looking at, Nottingham Forest in a very strong position. Don't forget, they'll have had 3 years in the Premier League, so they can lose £105 million over that period with regards to PSR. said them getting in the Champions League would be fantastic football in general. They'll get 30 to 40 million straight away as a welcome to the Champions League, shall we say. We'll get 1.5 million per home game in ticket sales and 2 million euros for every game they win, if they manage to win any, which I'm sure they would. If they were, now I asked him about signing £60 million players because we're linked with Cunha. Fabrizio Romano says Cunha's our dream target. So he said, if they would sign a £60 million player, they'd be spreading that over 5 years, probably. That's the fee over amortization. Champions League money will be transformational for the football club. Wages would go up within the squad for bonuses and new contracts, and they'll need a bigger squad. He did say Aston Villa looked like they could breach PSR because their PSR, and if we're in Europe, it's based on slightly tweaked rules around squad to wage ratio. So he said the main solution is to spend your money smartly. You can look at what Tottenham and Man United have done and where they are in the league. I asked him about wages as well, because Leicester got in big trouble with their wage bill when they got relegated. I don't think wages are a concern right now. The wage numbers for Forest I'm looking at aren't great. It was 166 million quid last year. I can't remember what it was per £100 that we spend. You know, I think it was like 94 quid goes on wages out of every £100 or something. But they'll probably get at least 35 million pounds in prize money this season. If you look at Leicester, their problem came when they got relegated. So last question, could Forest sign Matheus Cunha realistically? And he said, does the club have sufficient PSR headroom? I would say yes. From a cash point of view, yes, as well, as they've got a very benevolent owner. So that's where we're at. Colin, when you look at the squad, what do you think we need? Do we need a Cunha type player? Do we need numbers? What are you seeing?
Well, they did the scattergun approach to get where they are in the Premier League now. It's needed to be done. And at it now, it seems to have worked. I don't think they'll go scattergun this time. I think that they can now in a position to I was going to say pick and choose. It'd be interesting to see what they did because they've got some real good bargains this time. The centre half they got for basically next to nothing. Ain is next to nothing. They will have money to spend. Ideally, to add to the squad, you know, if Woods is there, Wong is there, going forward, they need another striker. They need, you know, a striker as such. Cunha at Wolves is on everybody's hit list, I think, because he is a talented boy. And I just feel that there would be, in his eyes, bigger clubs than Nottingham Forest. I'm not sure whether did Nuno have him at Wolves when he was there?
No.
So I'm not so sure where he is with that. I feel that again his position that he plays is not up front and he's not necessarily in midfield. He's that floating one. So it could be, you know, the likes that they might have to change the system to fit him in, or somebody has to miss out. It would be a fantastic addition to the squad. But I feel that they need a striker, and like most clubs need strikers, but I feel they need one to add to the squad, not necessarily to replace. With financial fair play rules, I have no idea how much money they're going to set aside, but what I can guarantee you, there will be activity, because this owner likes activity. They really like buying players, and I feel as though anything could happen in the next, 4 or 5 months. Honestly, anything could happen.
We discussed this at length through the day, Pete, and I'll ask your thoughts briefly on it just to finish. I mean, like you were saying to me, there's some nuances around this that I didn't have time to ask Kieran. I only got 10 minutes. He's super busy, so I appreciate him speaking to me anyway. But it was things like what happens if we're not in Europe the season after, things like that. What if we didn't sell any big players to cover ourselves? So there's lots of there are more questions around it. But in general, what do you make of it?
I mean, it looks like there's been pretty serious progress off the pitch, and I think that suggests, well, that's why we've seen what we've seen on the pitch, right? So I think Colin mentioned the recruitment being quite scattergun, and clearly a lot of that was needed because we came up with almost nothing left in the squad. But I think some of it was a bit of a mess, and at times I think there were probably too many people, too many cooks, I guess, too many people driving different recruitment strategies and all that sort of stuff. But things have changed a lot, and what we've seen in recent windows is a really carefully curated, clever recruitment strategy with players bought at unbelievable prices who have come here and already seen their values double and treble and even more in some cases. And I couldn't be more happy with that, really. And ideally, I'd like to see that sort of approach continue. And I think that the Champions League qualification, for me, what it brings more so than the finance side of things is that we're just a more attractive prospect. It's going to be much easier to do some of those deals because we're now a club that can show that you can come here and develop, but also that you've got an opportunity to compete at the very highest level, which has got to be a big deal for players looking for a move. I think we do need strengthening. I'm sure there's going to be money to spend, but it does the sort of slightly longer term does worry me because clearly, even if we're continually brilliant, Champions League qualification every season is a big ask and pretty unlikely. So I just don't want to see us get in a position where we're really struggling with PSR and all that stuff in the long run. But yeah, look, the rewards are obviously significant, and I do think that we'll need to strengthen the squad. I think if we could make 3 sort of really decent signings that instantly potentially improve the starting 11, or competition for that, maybe in a sort of number 6 defensive midfielder, another striker, probably a winger to push Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, because I think there's a decent old drop-off after those 2, then we'd be looking really, really sharp. And then I think there's a few holes where we're probably looking for somebody young with talent to develop and sort of become a threat for the first team in the longer term, probably maybe left-back in goal, I guess, and probably another centre-half with Bolly moving on. So that's how I see it. I just hope that they can continue with some of that magic they've had, because you look through that team last night, and the recruitment is outrageous. Every player in that 11 has been signed for really good value, is worth more than they were when we signed them, and is a sort of jealousy causing player for fans and teams around the country. So, a bit more of that magic, please.
Excellent. Right. We'll come to final thoughts shortly. Just before we go, it's good to have so many people with us. If you like, that'd be great. Do consider membership or Patreon, or just a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. There's lots more we could have discussed, really, but I thought Sosa and Sangare did quite well when they came on last night as well. Maybe we'll pick up on that tomorrow. Anything you want to add, Colin, before we go? Any final thoughts before your daughter eats the entire contents of your cupboard behind you?
I just feel that this is a special moment in forestry and in Forest at this moment in time for all the supporters who had to deal with an awful lot over the years, and they're going to Wembley, which is nice, which was a regular occurrence under past managers. So it's nice that they're going there. But if I could get a couple of cup final tickets or a couple of semi-final tickets, I'd be most grateful.
Same here. We'll do our best. Pete, I'll rephrase any finals. So you're getting some hammer in the comments because I think people think we shouldn't criticise players when referencing Taiwo. Will in particular, I can see, is pretty narked at you. What would you say to Will?
I'm not telling people that they can't have opinions about where we need to improve, or players not performing up to standard or whatever. I just think that there's often a desire amongst parts of the fan base to dig somebody out, and to me right now it doesn't feel like we need that. Look, I don't disagree that there's upgrades to be made across the pitch, and I'm not addressing any of this at Will particularly. I haven't seen his comments about any of those players that we're talking about, so I couldn't. But from what I've seen online and from some of the comments knocking around and stuff, I think people in some parts have just been a little bit unnecessarily critical and looking for some negatives where I don't think there are any. So yeah, look, criticism's absolutely fine. I don't think anyone's got an issue with that. Sometimes I feel like it's a little unhelpful to be digging players out, and you just get these patterns, don't you, where there's someone who's a bit of a scapegoat. I just, right now, do we need that? Definitely not.
There you go. Very good. Right. Hopefully that addressed what Will was saying and a few others. I saw we'll be back tomorrow. Villa preview, Friday opposition preview, Saturday post-match show. It's all coming thick and fast. Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, absolute pleasure to do this with proper legend. Great to hear all of Colin's views on this current Forest. Does it bring back any memories, Colin? Did you see any of your great side in what they're doing right now?
Well, they're doing exactly what they're battling. As I said to you before, we battled after Christmas when we won the league. Certainly after that, and we won. We went on a run of 42 league games unbeaten. And people used to think we battered sides. We absolutely didn't. We absolutely didn't batter sides. We got hammered, absolutely hammered. But we'd come away with a 1-1 or a 1-0. And that's the sort of spirit these lads are showing. You know, these lads have gone on a run themselves. They're not there because they're a rubbish side. They're where they are because of what they've achieved as a collective. That's the whole of the football club. That's the whole lot of them. And even the wash ladies, if they do have wash ladies anymore, we just have one washing machine, and Larry Lloyd got that because it broke. The other side of the coin, these are really good times, and you wouldn't be a decent football club if you weren't trying to improve your side. That's what I will try to say about transfers and people saying, well, he's not as good enough and he's not good enough. You wouldn't be a football team or a good football team if you weren't trying to improve on what you've got. And you have to say, admittedly, the scattergun approach was needed. But as you say, Matt, this last group of, I don't know, half a dozen signings, if you'd have said to me, those half a dozen signings will come off, and they have. They've absolutely come off on block. And the football recruitment has got it right for once. I'm sure there are a few of those 60 players they've signed. You know, they said, oh, maybe we did it wrong about that one. But they'll put it right. They'll put it right. I mean, I don't know how you get rid of players. I have to say, I don't know how you do it now with contracts and whatever. If a player just turns around and said, I'm not leaving. And I don't know how that works now with your financial fair play rules. I don't know all these things that work. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Because to get 4 or 5 players in, I think you'll have to have a squad of 25 for the Champions League, I think it is. So somebody's going to miss out somewhere along the line. And that'll be interesting to see what happens. But honestly, it's great to go down to City Ground. It's great on a night like last night, and you should just all enjoy it because I'll tell you what, it's a long time coming. Honestly, it really has been a long time coming, and you've waited so long to get this moment in your lives where you're seeing a team in red do the business for you, and I'm really pleased for a lot of you. Cheers, pal.
No, enjoyed it. So I'll say thank you, Colin. I should apologise to Colin. I didn't even tell him this could take an hour. I just said, would you like to do the podcast? I'm not thinking it could be this long. So.
It's all right. It's all right. I've got nothing to eat now. She's eating it all.
I saw that. Yeah, I should thank your granddaughter as well. She's been the guest star of this, going around in the background, eating you out of house and home. So, yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks, Colin. Thanks to Pete. Hopefully see you tomorrow. But if we don't, have a good day, everyone. And we shall see you soon.
Cheers.